Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Chris here, and in today's video we're going to be shooting out some of my favorite Rhodes plugins. Let's go. So to start us off, if you're not already aware about what the Rhodes keyboard is, aka the Fender Rhodes keyboard I should specify, it's an electric piano that was made in the late 50s but really truly popular around the 70s. It's basically a piano, but instead of hammers hitting strings when you play the keys, it's hitting like metal tines and picked up with an electromagnetic pickup inside the piano, so plays like a piano, feels like a piano, but sounds pretty different. So I just figured in this video I'd really like to dive into some of my favorite new plugins that have come out. There's some that came out recently, some that have been around for a while, so I thought let's just try them all out, shoot them out against each other and see how they sound. Take it from there. I tell you what, you really know it's the summer season. We've got the fan on a bit, the windows are open, so excuse any background noise, but let's dive straight in. First up, I've got the Rhodes V8 by Rhodes themselves. This is a lovely new plugin that's dropped this year, or at the end of last year more or less, and it's great. It's a lovely emulation. We'll give it a quick little spin right now. It's lovely. You've probably heard that sound once or twice before. Now bear in mind this is the default preset, which sounds okay. I think there are some better sounding default presets. So if you just have a quick flick through their presets, there's one of my favorite presets. Let's see. They've got quite a few on here. Some boosts and kind of defaults, but let's see. The Sparkle Top 69 just kind of removes a bit of that edge that the default preset has. And yeah, let's listen to it. Awesome, so that is the Rhodes V8. I'm just quickly going to flick through all of them so we can get a little taste of what they have to offer. Next up is the Electra 88 by Universal Audio, also a new plugin that's dropped this year, and sounds a little something like this. Lovely, you can hear that presence, that warmth. Sounds really clean and clear. Moving swiftly on, next we've got the Arturia Stage 73. Again, not a huge fan of this default preset, so I'm just quickly going to find one that sits a bit more in my liking. Okay, so I've settled on this 1972 Med Amped EP, whatever that means, but sounds a little something like this. Great, so you can probably tell I'm a bigger fan of the warmer sounds as opposed to the really kind of punchy in your face Rhodes sounds, but obviously everyone has their own opinion on what type of Rhodes sounds they prefer, so I would really recommend you get a trial or you try these plugins out because they all offer very different things, different effects, you know, different ways to get your favorite sounds. So lastly on the list is Keyscape, the godfather of piano sounds. I am a big fan of this. I've been using it for ages, and this actually has a couple of Rhodes keyboards, so I'm just gonna start with the default one and then I'll move to their classic. Sounds a little something like this. Lovely, you can hear the kind of belly Rhodesy sounds. You've got a lot of warmth, a lot of presence. It's ticking a lot of boxes, but let me flick on the classic and see what the difference is. Okay, so maybe less of that belly sound, less of that presence. Again, obviously you've got plenty of presets with effects to dive into, but I think after now having a little demo of all of them, let's dive a bit deeper and see kind of where these plugins actually shine. Starting with the Rhodes V8. So as you can see on the front panel of this, we've got a couple of options. There's the preamp, which includes some envelope drive, EQ, VariPan compressor, chorus, phaser, and delay. And also bear in mind, I've done reviews on most of these plugins, so if you really want a true deep dive, you can probably go check those out. I'll link them below. So on the front of this, you can see we've got a couple of controls. If I wanted to make this brighter, for example, I could just bump that. We've got some EQ going on, very moldable sounds, drive. This envelope, I believe, works with the EQ. Yeah, that's right. So got that, really lovely. I'm just gonna pull that back for now. Pull back that EQ as well. And actually quite a little bit of that low end boost, quite nice. But next we've got the compressor. So the V8 in particular has a compressor setting right on the front, which is quite nice. If we use this outer knob, that's the compression, and then the middle knob is our makeup, so our volume. Nice, really punchy. We can add a bit of chorus on there. Lovely, so we've got that, a little bit of phaser. Couple of effects, obviously you've got some delay if you want that. Got a bit of a slap going on, but if I pull this back, sweet. So got a nice little, standard effects on the front, which is great. Personally, I'm a fan of this VariPan. I do like, especially that you can send it into audio rates and get these crazy sounds. Obviously, if I put this depth to max, you can hear what it's doing. It's just panning side to side. But if I crank that rate, pretty crazy sound, but obviously use at your own will. That's basically just a quick breakdown of the front. You do have this setup page, which looks a bit intimidating, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? But this is quite nice. You can see down here what these different colors relate to. So you've got at the top your level, the blue is your dampen, the green is your fine tune, and then the yellow is your timbre. And what this means is across the length of the keyboard, you can change certain aspects of the sound. So whether I want, for example, the high notes up here, it actually shows you where on the screen you're playing. So say I wanted all of these high notes from G up to the top to be a little damped. You can pull these down. So there's that. Obviously I can customize it to my own liking. If you go through some of the presets, people have actually already gone through, and some of the presets are very customized on this page in particular. But it's nice that they include it. Maybe not for everyone, but it's good that it's there. And then lastly, we have this detail page, which is nice because it gives you a bit more access to like the amp cab, the mic, stuff like that. Obviously, you've got the same stuff as what you've got on the front of the keyboard, so your EQ, your compressor, some of the effects, but they go a bit deeper as well. In this case, the main has a timbre shift, which I quite like because the default preset feels like it's somewhere up here. But I prefer it way more on this side. Again, personal preference, but figure out what you like. Last but not least, I really am a fan of this velocity curve right here, because when you're playing on different MIDI keyboards, obviously the response on certain plugins can be quite different depending what the action is like or whatever. So just being able to change this curve and almost have it like a natural compressor on your playing. So on the left side it's all very dynamic, and if I push it to the right, so you know, me, I like to land somewhere in between. Great. I think that's probably enough for this. Let's move back on to the Electra 88. Now this is quite a posh looking plugin, I'm not gonna lie. It sounds great as well. Let's just get that record arm going. Boom. Sweet. So again, your standard Rhodes keyboard, but obviously we've got a couple of controls on the front, some effects. A little bit of EQ. And then some vibrato. Sweet. I'm just going to pull that back. Then we've got some mod, which is chorus. And delay. A little bit of reverb. Awesome. So that's kind of the front page of this. I am a big fan of this sound. It does kind of tick the box straight away for me, and obviously having these effects on the front is great, but we can dive a bit deeper into the pedals and the amplifier section. So I'm actually going to start with the amplifier, because this is where I think they get very universal audio about the whole thing. So this right now is our default. We're using this center panel, this center amp I should say, and obviously you can go in, you can change the mics, do all that stuff. You can add some room, which sounds really great. A little bit of liveliness to the sound. Sweet. But my favorite part of this whole thing is that they've included their waterfall Leslie cabinet inside the plugin, which is awesome. Really provides a different sound to the Rhodes keyboard. Also, the fact that if I flick up the mod wheel on my keyboard, speeds up that Leslie. Great, so you got that really nice feature. I'm just quickly going to bounce into these pedals and the studio effects. Obviously, just before I leave, you've got a DI box option. And then your tiny Fender amp, which I noticed in my plugin review just how saucy this amp is. It's got a lot of heat, a lot of drive. Sounds awesome. But yeah, let's dive into these pedals and the studio effects. So you can see we've got a couple of things going on in the studio. In the pedals, it's a bit simpler, but these pedal effects basically relate to the pedals down here. So if I change this wah to a Filtron, we'll change it to Filtron. Sick. And then I can change this phaser to a chorus. Awesome. And you can tell the effects are quality. Like, they do sound really nice. I'm a big fan of this compressor because it's just quite straightforward, you know. You just got a knob that compresses. Not a lot of change in gain, which I quite like. And then just having a lot of compression and playing soft is a favorite of mine, because I do like the rawness and the raucous sound that tends to come out of it. So in this case, I've got the compressor cranked quite a bit, but I'll play soft, so all of that quiet noise is just brought up. Oh my god. Also, excuse me if I'm sounding a little bit croaky. I've been sick all weekend and YouTube never sleeps, so here I am. Okay, so slapping that compressor off, we can dive into these studio effects. Obviously, it gets a bit more technical here, so let's see what we got. So first up, we've got this EQ and this compressor, which is nice that you actually have the option to swap them if you're into that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward, some filters on the EQ and then just a nice little parametric EQ. The compressor, I quite like. It's on all the time, but you've got these different kind of attack release ratio buttons at the bottom, which gives you a bit more control than what you'll get on the pedal version, which is quite nice. But if I crank this mix to full, give myself a bit more compression, they all have a slight different character to them, especially this aggro. You can, you know, it's driven as if it was on an actual 1176, where you can crank the compressor and actually get some saturation out of it. Got that. Fantastic. I'm just going to put it on smooth, dial this all back a bit. But great. Next up, you've got the modulation. Again, similar to how you've got your modulation in here, but maybe a bit more in depth. I've got some chorus, flanger, phaser, and they've also added this wow and flutter, which is quite nice. So if I turn this on, that's the chorus, flanger, phaser, and then this wow and flutter. So we can only control, we don't have access to the mix, but we've got this intensity and this rate. Maybe a bit heavy on the wow and flutter, but push that up a bit. Then last but not least, you've got your delay and reverb, which is great. It's bog standard effects. But what I quite like is the fact that they've even included the fact to send the delay to the reverb, because without it, if I had both of them, you can hear there's a reverb on the initial sound, but then the delay is dry. So if I crank this, you know, sweet. All in all, big fan of this plugin. I think it sounds great. Let's move back on to the Arturia 73. So this one may be simpler on the front, but obviously you've got some tabs that you can dive into. I do like you got the 73 and 74 switch. Slightly brighter on the 74, which is nice, but let's dive into the suitcase tab. That just changes the cab underneath the Rhodes, which is quite good. As well, you got a couple more options here. You got some EQ, some vibrato. Sick. And then in your advanced and your effects, this is where it obviously gets a bit more technical, and you can pick all the models of your instruments and whether you want it mono or stereo. Room is interesting. Awesome. And then obviously you've got the really fine details like your pickup noise, hammer noise. I'm not going to get into that, but maybe we'll do a deeper dive video on this because it is a very interesting plugin. And then last but not least, we've got our effects, and this is where you can add your studio effects, and they've given you quite a few to pick from. Obviously some are already on, such as this stereo pan. Oh, and it does sound great. Just your classic, tape effects, and there was something that I thought was quite interesting on here. Sick. And then obviously you got a couple of choices between a few amps, your twin amp or your rotary. In this case, I prefer the twin amp. Can turn off that cry wah. Turn off the bright. And then lastly, your room, which is just a little bit of reverb, but you can change it to different algorithms of reverb, which is great. But then lastly, Keyscape. This is my personal favorite when I'm picking a Rhodes sound because it's just quite easily accessible, and the sounds are pretty much where I want straight off the get-go, so I'm not doing too much digging. But once again, let's just quickly flick through some of the tabs on here and see what we've got. So again, this is the sound of it. Change that tremolo slightly. Awesome. If you go into the tone, you've got the option between your direct or your speaker, which adds a nice little bit of low end, nice little bit of that low mids, I guess you could say. If it's too much, you can always dial it back in the tone. And you've got some denoise because once you sustain all the notes, probably get a little bit of hiss in the background, so you obviously have the option to denoise that if you want. Personally, I've never heard the noise that bad, but it's there if you want it. And you've got some color shift on the timbre. Again, some very wide options on sound choice there. And then lastly, a little bit of tape, doing what I assume is a little bit of compression and saturation. Not super audible in my opinion, but it's there if you want it. And then lastly, some reverb and some modulation. This one is a bit limited in the fact that you've only got one-on-one, whereas the Arturia and the other plugins usually offer that you can stack effects. But again, they sound really good off the bat. I quite like this Univibe one. And then with the reverb, so, couple of options. I think they sound pretty posh. Lastly, you've got your settings where it's basically just some pitch bend, and you can pick your actual MIDI keyboard. So in this case, I could go into my Novation, and there's the SL Mark II. That usually keeps it a bit more in line with the velocity of the actual keyboard you're playing, so it makes the response a little bit more to your liking. That's basically it. Honestly, I mean, there's no winner in my eyes. They all sound pretty great, but I'd love to hear what you'd think below. I know I've got my favorites, so let me know what you use. Obviously, everybody has a different budget as well, and these all come in very different price ranges, but at least it's great to hear what they all sound like side by side. And you know, time and place for everything. I think like the Rhodes is really particular to a specific era. The Electra 88 and the Keyscape for me are pretty generally good. Stage 73, you've got loads of options for effects and all of this stuff, customization, so there's a lot of options here. But I think I'm just going to finish off by just playing a quick demo on each of them, and I'll label which one's which. But once again, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. Leave a comment down below and like and subscribe. The support really helps the channel, so thank you very much for that. And once again, I've been Chris Vella, and I'll see you on the next one.